Leslie Durso, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on here today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. I remember the last time that we were together in person, we were actually doing our friend Allie's show, and you were the co-host of Food Heals Nation. And we had a really fun conversation, being able to talk about all things plant-based lifestyle, health, and recipes. And so I thought it'd be fun for us to catch up today, since you are one of the leading faces of the plant-based movement as a vegan-based chef. And I would love to be able to share a lot of your knowledge with our community.
Absolutely. My brain is your brain.
So one thing I'd love to start with is you've had a pretty, I'd say, illustrious career up until this point, and you've made a lot of different changes in your career, which I always find fascinating, because before we started recording this call, we're actually talking about a mutual friend or a colleague, Jesse Eitzler, and talking about building that life resume. And that's something that I want to talk about throughout today's show. But of course, you weren't always a well-known plant-based chef. So I'd love to talk about, how did you get into this particular industry in the first place? Were you always plant-based? Were you always vegan?
Yeah. I mean, let's go back to the very beginning. I went plant-based when I was like 7 or 8. My mom says 7. My dad says 8. I don't actually remember. But it was around that age in my life where I just, somebody had told me what a vegetarian was. And that's what I said. Oh my God, I'm that. Because growing up in an Italian household, I never liked meat. It just was never my thing. My mom said she put me in the high chair, put food on my little platter, and I would eat all the fruits and veggies, and I just wouldn't eat the meat. It just wasn't my thing. And then they told me that I would die if I didn't eat meat.
And you're still here today.
Want to make anything special for me? Look at me, I'm still here, and it's not a fad. My dad thought it was just something I was going through, and clearly I'm still going through it. But so, yeah, it just never really agreed with me as a child. And then as I got older and found out more about where meat came from, the process at which it comes, the environmental reasons, the health benefits, I was just more and more convinced and excited about my decision. But I certainly never thought that it would be a career for me. I was the only vegetarian/vegan that I knew growing up. And I say vegetarian/vegan because I was vegetarian for a long time. You know, my parents told me that cheese didn't come from animals. I wasn't reading labels. I didn't know there were eggs in certain things, but I didn't drink milk and I didn't eat eggs full. So I was as vegan as a small child with not a whole lot of support around them could be.
Sure.
But yeah, when I became an adult, this was not my first career, as you mentioned. I started modeling in my teenage years. That fell into an acting career, which landed me on a soap for a while, which then took me into a hosting career where I was working with Bill Nye the Science Guy, and absolutely loved that chapter of my life. He was so inspiring to me and really taught me how much education could play a part in my next chapter. And it was actually him who suggested that I should do what he's doing with food, because all I would do is talk about food and bring food to set. And he knew I was vegan. And it was just, he was so inspiring to me. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so I went to, the networks right after our show ended and said, hey, I want to do a vegan cooking show or a vegan education show. And everybody was like, are you a chef? Are you an author? Are you a doctor? And you a nutritionist? And I was like, no. And so I went out to become the best chef I could possibly be. And that's what I've been working on ever since.
What year did you present that to the different networks?
That was 2011.
2011. Okay. So about 10 years ago or so. And, but it still wasn't like the internet didn't have the power that it has today because we didn't have social media like we have today.
Yeah.
So
but it did in that we had blogs. So when I decided to become a chef, and I was literally Googling how to become a chef, and a friend of mine had a blog, and she said, you should just start a blog and start, writing down your recipes. And I was like, yeah, all right. So I Googled how to start a blog, and I started a blog that day. And lo and behold, it was a big launch pad for me because the blog just happened to become pretty successful at the time. to give away all my recipes for free anymore. Although I still give a lot away on Instagram.
Yes.
Now working the hotels and resorts and places where I work now, I don't get to give away every last secret, but I give away a lot.
Yeah, you've got some great recipes up on your website, which we'll definitely get to towards the end too. You've got desserts, you've got vegan entrees, appetizers, all sorts of great things for people to be able to at least, dip their toe in the waters if they're not already plant-based right now. But let's talk about that. So you did move towards becoming a vegan-based chef, and obviously that took off. But how did you hone your skills? Like, did you study under individual people? Were you self-taught? I'd love to know more about that. That gives it your unique flair.
Yeah, well, traditional school was never my thing. I actually didn't even graduate from college, which I don't talk about that often, because I started working and I knew that my strengths were in learning on the job, so to speak, learning as I went and not from books. And so when I became a chef, first of all, there were no vegan culinary schools at the time, nothing with accreditation. There's not really even that many vegan culinary schools now, and not very many accredited. I don't even know if any of them are accredited, to be honest with you. So instead, I decided to find mentors. I am a big believer in the mentor-mentee relationship, and you can learn so much from people just working with them on a one-on-one basis. So instead, I decided to travel the world and work in kitchens for free all over the place and figure it out and figure out how to veganize what they were doing and kind of create my own style of cooking, which was kind of wild at the time. But like you said, you mentioned 10 years, and I was just thinking that, I'm a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell's books. And he always says, the 10,000 hours, which is about 10 years until you find success in something. And I'm just shy of that, but I feel like I'm doing okay.
You are. And I would say you probably got your 10,000 hours a little while ago too. And I think that's probably why you're already finding success. It's kind of how many hours you put in, how quickly you do it, that can make a difference maker. So let's talk a little bit about the plant-based lifestyle and why would someone in the first place? So you decided meat wasn't really your thing at a very young age. You learned about the different environmental-based issues, how animals are treated, et cetera. And those are all very valid reasons. Like, there's no doubt about it. And many people go vegan specifically for that reason. But I want to talk about why, health benefit wise, because you do a lot of wellness based coaching with your plant-based lifestyle and diet planning. What are some of the benefits that people are going to see?
Well, gosh, everything.
Let's name a couple.
Well, first of all, I have to say, when you go plant-based, it's not about, there are a lot of unhealthy vegans out there. It's not eating strictly vegan. There's a lot of processed foods out there, a lot of foods with high salt content, high sugar content. So not all vegan food is created equal. A plant-based whole food diet, which is what I try to adhere to, that doesn't mean no desserts ever, but it just means making the foundation of your life whole plants. You can see enormous benefits. I mean, everything from curing and reversing disease. I contributed to the Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams' latest book called Healthy at Last. And it's a phenomenal book about how he reversed his diabetes and actually regained his vision. He had lost his vision and regained it simply by changing his diet and lifestyle. So there's just an insane amount of health benefits. I mean, everything from your skin, your hair, your sex drive, you can live longer. I mean, it's said that vegans can live up to 9.5 years longer than a meat-eating diet. So, I mean, the reasons to go plant-based are endless, not to mention the animal benefits and animal welfare and the environmental benefits of going plant-based. It's so much. So it really is about tackling specifically for you, where areas in your life that you can tackle, that you can be healthier and that you can improve upon. And sometimes it's not always going vegan 100%. You know, a lot of vegans are like, you have to be 100% vegan or you're not vegan at all. And it's, to me, it's like, you know, I believe in intuitive eating and listening to your body. Your body, every time you eat something, your body tells you whether or not it likes it. It's constantly giving you signs and hints as to what you should be eating. When you crave something, it's your body saying that it needs that element. You know, I always hear from meat eaters, I'm craving steak. I crave steak all the time. You don't actually crave steak, and you don't actually crave protein. You're actually craving iron, which is something that people get deficient in a lot, and their body automatically goes to craving steak because that's how they typically receive iron in their diet. But there's so many ways of getting iron, as you know, in greens that are so much cleaner and better for you in all respects to get. So it's really about listening to your body and figuring out what it's saying to you.
Absolutely. And I would say 3 times, maybe 4. The 4th one just didn't last as long. Have been vegan for 6+ months during, I would say, the past 11 years when I started doing a lot more internships and studying Ayurvedic medicine and understanding more of a plant-based, holistic-based lifestyle. And what I found in the end, and this kind of settled in around 4 years ago or so, maybe 5, was that for me, I'm completely plant-based until dinner. So I don't have any meat, any fish, any animal products. In general, I don't have dairy at all. But then in dinner, a couple times a week, I will either have some meat or I'll have some fish. On the weekends, I might have 1 or 2 eggs. And for me, that's what I found has worked really, really well. But again, I work with thousands of people in my practice that are completely vegan. And just like you, what I try to do is support them so that they're on a whole food vegan diet. And so they get all of the nutrients that they need for their body. Because so many people are just, they're going to the same exact foods every single day. They're eating a lot of cereals. They're doing things that are not actually nutritious, that they're not getting that rainbow of colors into their diet. And so I look at it as, you know, if you're 80, 90% plant-based, then that extra 10%, even if not ideal, is not going to have as much effect in your body. And I kind of compared the two too. Is like a lot of people say, oh, I'm on a gluten-free diet. Well, a gluten-free diet can just mean a lot of processed foods, a lot of things from boxes and bags, and gluten-free doesn't always mean healthier for you, except
Absolutely.
of course, if you have that issue.
And I always say why when someone says gluten, because I actually thought that I had a gluten sensitivity a while back, and I actually discovered it was a yeast sensitivity, not the actual gluten, because I was always fine with pasta, but I had a hard time with bread.
Yes.
And then when I was in Europe, I would never have a problem with bread. And I was like, all right, let's break this down. Why is this? And then I realized how much more yeast is in our foods in the United States than Europe, and what active yeast does in our systems when we're consuming it. And it's really pretty terrible for you.
I'm in complete agreement. I'm not an advocate of adding yeast to a lot of foods, if any at all. I don't think it's good for the human body. And also, we don't have glyphosate, or they don't have glyphosate in many of the countries over in Europe because it has been banned. So you don't typically have the same reaction. The wheat's hybridized more here in the United States. So I don't think there's a lot of healthy wheat over here, of course, commercially. But a lot of people do find that they can do an old German rye bread recipe. They can do old sourdough recipes without the yeast, and that they don't have the same digestive-based issues. So I do recommend food sensitivity testing for sure. And if you are good, again, it's more of a processed food, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that you can't have bread every once in a while. I would say once a week for sure. It's one of my favorite foods. I do have bread. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I also say, like, choose your breads. Like, there's a reason why shelf-stable sliced bread in a plastic wrapping can stay on the shelf for a month. And what's that doing in your system versus real bread that you buy at the bakery or in the bakery section goes bad in about a day because it's not meant to last forever. It's not meant to stay soft in a plastic bag on your counter for a month and a half. So it's really about eating fresh foods. And, you know, most bread should have 2 to 4 ingredients in them. If it has more than 4 ingredients in it, it's probably not so good for you.
Yes, I would say that's very good advice, and be able to pronounce all of those different ingredients for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, that is good. So what is a typical day in the life for you now that you've really settled in to your lifestyle? And I know that this is maybe not for everybody, but what does a day in the life for you look like? Do you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Do you only have 2 meals a day?
Well, day in the life pre-COVID or post-COVID?
That is true. Let's go pre-COVID, because hopefully we'll be back there soon. Yeah.
Pre-COVID, I was waking up in a different city almost every day. I was working all over the world, meeting new people every single day, cooking all over. It was very, very exciting. Post-COVID is definitely kind of regrouping, filming the show, which I'm so excited about, Around the World in 80 Plates. But as far as what I eat every day, luckily I work with hotels and resorts. So when I'm traveling all over the world, I still get to eat the foods that I like to eat every morning because I put them on the menu. So my days typically start with Bircher muesli. I think it's one of the healthiest things on earth that you can eat. If you've never heard of Bircher muesli, it's basically overnight oats that are in coconut milk. And in addition to the oats, you have chia seeds, my version of it is oats, chia seeds, apples, almonds, golden raisins, cinnamon, and what else do I put in it? I think that's it. And then I leave a big batch of it in my refrigerator up to like a week. I make it like once a week. And then I top it with fresh fruit. And I have that every morning. It's so satisfying to me. And it just makes me feel so good. It gives me all the energy that I need for the day. And then I typically eat my biggest meal midday instead of at night, because I'm usually always testing something or I'm filming something. And so I tend to eat that thing midday. And then at night, I just have something light. I'll have a salad. I'll have a couple snacks. I'm not a big eater at night.
That's great. Well, that's a very Ayurvedic day in the life right there, which is nice to hear. And that muesli it can be so beneficial for so many people. Do you eat yours cold, room temperature, or do you warm it up?
I eat mine cold, coldish. Yeah. I like it cold.
That's good. You're also in California, so it's a little warmer there. I know a lot of people in the Northeast and colder based countries, all you have to do is add a little hot water to it. It's not like that. It's that difficult to reheat it, but that is a really healthy breakfast. I eat oats during the winter myself. Not dissimilar to that at all. I might use a little bit of macadamia nut milk. I might put some wild blueberries on there. I might smash up some raspberries to make like my own homemade raspberry fresh jam. Yeah. So pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course I do my smoothie.
That honestly, that's more of my like fall winter breakfast too. A lot of times in the summer, living in California, being based in California, but also working in so many tropical places, I'll often just have a large smoothie for breakfast. My smoothies are usually 2 or 3 bananas, a bunch of fresh fruit, whatever I have on hand, ginger, turmeric, greens. I kind of throw everything in there.
Once you've done a smoothie for like 3 weeks and you get that into your morning routine, it's unbelievably energizing. And it's also, people throw the word cleanse around too much, but it is very cleansing for the body. When you put in 24 ounces of water from all that fruit and all of that, or 32 ounces, which I make mine, everything else after that is not going to be as satisfying because you super hydrated your body with all these rainbow of color phytonutrients and all of that, like I said, oxygen going to the tissues. It's amazing. So I do that, and I do a little bit of warm oatmeal for the winter time to kind of offset that smoothie.
100% agree. And I have the controversial opinion, and I actually don't know if you agree with me or not, that I totally am full on board with smoothieing, love it, but I am not a juicer. I do not believe in juicing.
Well, my opinion is never juice your fruits, and you can juice your veggies if you would like. So if you juice your fruits, I
can get on board with that.
Okay.
I can get on board with that. I think juicing your fruits is like one of the most dangerous things you can do.
Yes, I don't think large amounts, because a human would never consume 8 oranges in a sitting. And so to make an orange juice with 8 oranges. Now, again, there's a time and place for everything. And so, but I will say in general, juicing all of your fruit, you need that fiber to be able to properly handle that amount of fructose or sugar from the fruit. But at the same time, I'd rather have people eat their veggies. It's just if you have digestive issues and because you need the satiation from the veggies, you need the fiber. A lot of people are against vegetables now, which is completely insane.
That is insane.
It is. It's completely insane. But we go through these times, and it will last another year or two, and then we'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, we forgot that you actually need prebiotics to create a healthy gut microbiome. So it will all pass. In the end, it really comes down to what would a human eat? What would be easiest for a human to get? How is the digestive system built? And it's built to eat produce. And that's the truth. And if we look at our closest primate friends, they eat a diet that's predominantly plant-based with just a little bit of protein thrown in there. And then again, you look at the longest lived people in the world, they don't have high-fat diets. They don't have high-protein diets. They have higher fiber, vegetable-based diets. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of the work that Dan Buettner's doing with the blue zones and going around the world and studying those people that are living the longest. And that's it right there. Like, that's what you should be following. You and I are both young. We live our lives the way that we do, and I feel great. And I'm sure you do as well. But at the end of the day, I mean, those people that are all living over 100, that's the goal. Like, that's who we should all be modeling ourselves after. Like, what are those people eating and how are they living? Let's live that way. And I know community is also one of the biggest factors in living a long life. And I think that has been one of the best things to come out of this pandemic, as I think people are finding their communities and really kind of reconnecting in a way that they hadn't before, either through Zooms and friends, or like creating these little pods of people that are hanging out together. And I don't know, I think it's kind of cool.
I do as well. I think that there are some good things that we can certainly take from that. I hope that we can go back to one day still being able to give someone a hug, a handshake, that we're not afraid to do that in the future. But there's a lot. I mean, they really have. I used to travel twice a month for work, giving seminars and just speaking at events, which I loved. Not quite as much as you, but I don't know that I'll go back to that. I mean, maybe once a month after this. But for me, there was just something about now understanding the whole being at home with my daughters a little bit more, and just realizing there's like a time and place for me to do all of these things. And maybe right now is not the right time to be traveling as much as I once was. So, I'm appreciative in that respect to that. But I wanted to say too, you've done so much traveling around the world. I love on your website, I think you have a tab that says travel, and it's like Leslie's favorite places around the world. And it's pretty cool because when you look at all these different cities, Boston, Mass has not made the list yet, but I'm saying all these different places around the world, you give some of your favorite restaurants, and tell me a little bit about that, but also what you've seen similarity wise and difference wise, again, all around the world.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do love Boston. I have some cousins in Boston and friends in Boston, and I do love Boston as a city. And Boston should be on my website. I will add it. But yeah, I really took kind of my favorite places. So in the discussion of community and staying kind of on that topic as well, I believe in travel and seeing new things. But I think the most special thing that I've gotten from travel is creating communities around the world where I continuously go back to. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the places I've been, I haven't been once. I'm not someone that visits a city once and gives you all of my recommendations. There's a town in Italy that I go back to every single summer, and I've been there every summer for 11 years. And I absolutely love it. And I consider the people that live there part of my family and me as part of theirs. And so I think there's just something so beautiful about creating these home away from homes and places that you can go and really turn off and really relax. But plus, speaking of Italy, it's like the land of accidentally vegan food. I coined that term years ago, and it's so true. I mean, they eat a predominantly plant-based diet, and they tend to separate their meats and fish and vegetables and fruits. So oftentimes, so many things are naturally vegan, and they don't even think about it being vegan because it's just the way that they eat it. And I love finding foods like that. And so that's a lot of the recommendations on the website too, are not necessarily all vegan restaurants, but there are places that have these spectacular dishes that just happen to be vegan that they do.
Well, that's great to hear. And one of the misnomers now is a lot of people saying, well, the real Mediterranean diet has lots of pork in it and lard and those types of things. And I said, no, this is a recent occurrence of some Mediterranean people now having access to more pork and, adding lard. But that was never the case. I mean, half of my family is from Italy, and my great-grandaunt and grandmother came over. And it was the same thing. It was, we would do different courses, and you would separate out actually the meat, and we would always eat the salad at the end. I always tell that story, but basically it was lots of vegetables and prepared in many different ways. There were lots of sauces, and yes, we had pasta, those types of things, but pasta being a plant-based food as well. And then we would have a little bit of meat in there, but meat wasn't even always like the biggest part of the meal. It was just part of that meal, or fish, of course. So, people saying
availability and the expense of it.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, most places in the world, meat is pretty expensive. And unless you're going out and growing it yourself or fishing and catching it yourself, you don't necessarily have the resources to purchase it.
100%. Now, that's the thing is, when you look back to even in ancient Greece, and if you kind of look back in history, there were people that had a high meat diet and high in purines and all of these things. They were the ones that got the gout and the different diseases and actually lived nowhere near as long as the people who had very little to eat, even just some rice and some bread, like very, very simple diet. Those people ended up living oftentimes far longer. So again, I'm not advocating, I'm advocating a healthy, well-rounded diet, and you can absolutely get that as a vegan. And if what I'm doing is not promoting the carnivore diet, the keto diet, any of these really extreme fad-based diets right now. It's just, in the long run, it's not going to be healthy. And I feel like I'm always like that guy who has to say that because I know it's fun right now. Like, I'm only going to eat meat all day. Well, okay, get that out of your system. Stop that though after a few weeks and get back to a more balanced approach. All right. So what I would love to chat with you.
Yeah, well, I also think about food.
Sorry, go ahead. We've got a little bit of a delay. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I'm so sorry. And things. And when I think about food and I talk about food with people and the diet that's right for them, I often talk about how easy things are for your body to digest, and how long it takes for things to digest in your body. Essentially, you're the doctor, you can say, but essentially my understanding is you want food to come in and out as easily as possible, to absorb as many nutrients and have it be gone as soon as possible. And that happens with a lot of plants in your diet. And when you take those out and you put in a lot of hard to process animal proteins, it doesn't really make for beneficial. You may bulk up, you may get the muscle definition that you're looking for, but in the long run, you're not going to gain longevity and you're not going to gain long-term health.
100%. Like, that's the thing, is there's a lot of people right now following a carnivore diet, a keto-based diet, because in the short term, a low carbohydrate diet does lead to weight loss. And then it doesn't. So it works for a certain period of time and then it doesn't. And the biggest issues around that are especially for women, because women that are in their 30s and 40s and beyond oftentimes end up then with a sluggish metabolism, with thyroid issues, with estrogen dominance, and a whole host of issues. And they don't understand that it is correlated to a low carb diet. And the reason is that it worked initially, and then it didn't. And the other big thing is, this goes for men as well, is there are no long-lived people that have ever been on a high protein or a high fat only diet. And if we're talking about a real keto diet, well, we're talking about 70+% fat, and a carnivore diet, we're really talking about devoid of protein, devoid of vegetables and a lot of fruits. So these are experiments that people are really taking with their life. And if they want to point to a lot of these tribes that are only living off of this and this, I've looked at that research and they live to their mid 60s. And so that's dangerous. You're going to regret it when you're 55, not when you're 30 or 35.
Right. Exactly. And it's the short-term gain versus the long-term goals. And I mean, if you only want to look good in your 30s and you want to die by the time you're 60, that's on you. I plan on him living a very long, healthy, wonderful life and enjoying it for as long as I can. I want to be on this ride as long as I can. And so that's why I really love the plant-based diet. I feel the best on it. And people always laugh because there's that blood type diet that everybody's so into. And I'm an O. I have an O blood type, which is supposed to be the meat eater blood type. And I've never craved meat in my life. I've never had a desire to even take a bite out of it ever since I stopped eating it as a child. So I don't know. I think that there's exceptions to all these rules, and you just have to kind of do your own thing.
Yes. And there's no singular approach either, meaning looking at just the specific proteins, in your blood cannot possibly tell you all the foods that you can and cannot eat. And I'm not against the research that the Adamos have done. I actually think that they're very intelligent and run a really nice wellness center, not too far from me, right up in New Hampshire. But again, we're looking at a multifactorial approach to health. And part of it is community, part of that is slowing down and food combining and all sorts of great things that we've kind of lost, our tradition with. And I think that needs to be brought back. So tell me though, when you cook, because you are a chef at a few of the Four Seasons. I'd love you to kind of correct me there. Let me know exactly where, but also how are the guests there responding to a lot of these plant-based dishes?
It's been incredibly well received. I just got back for the Four Seasons in Putamita, Mexico, which is probably my flagship Four Seasons property. We now have over 150 plant-based items on the menus down there. And it really is truly because of the demand. We started with a much smaller program, but the amount of people that are ordering it is skyrocketing. And we're finding it's not just vegans. It's really anyone that wants to eat something that just sounds good and tastes good. And my food is very plant heavy. I use tofu in Asian cuisine. I don't use really any other substitutes. Sit on the beach in Mexico and eat avocado baja tacos, or order wild mushroom sopes, or any of the other beautiful dishes that are down there just because they sound good. You don't have to be vegan to eat vegan food, and I think that's the biggest misnomer of the diet is. And again, like we were saying earlier, it's okay if you just want to eat vegan on certain days, or if you want to eat vegan until it's just to create lots of tasty options for you to eat that way. Because I think before it was also a lot harder because vegan food was kind of only option for non-dairy milk was powdered rice milk. And now we have an entire section in the dairy section of all plant-based milks. And you can make a plant-based milk out of anything. And so I think today our options are just endless. And it's so beautiful to see. In my wildest dreams, did I ever think that I'd ever be able to eat any of these things? There was no vegan ice cream when I was a kid. There was none of this. So it's never been easier to go plant-based, that's for sure. And it's never been tastier. It really hasn't.
No, 20 years ago is when I gave up cow's milk dairy and dairy in general, because there wasn't sheep or goats based dairy or anything like that back then. But that's all there was. There was only rice milk based alternatives. So I was still, again, this is my early 20s. So we're looking at rice cheese, we're looking at rice milk, just like you said, and we're looking at rice-based ice creams, which are chalky and not very good at all. And it's really within just the last, I would say 10 years now, we have coconut milk-based products, cashew milk-based products, and things that are much better substitutes. If you have something like, there's so many good brands now, but like if I give someone a Nadamu ice cream, they're not going to know the difference really between that and their average, whatever ice cream out of the gates that they might get. So I think that it's come a long way, and it's such a much healthier choice. Even if you only gave up cow's milk dairy for a plant-based dairy alternative, much, much better off.
I agree. And that's when people come to me and they're like, well, what's one thing I should give up? Should I give up steak? And I'm like, give up dairy. I think dairy is the most toxic thing you can put in your body right now. And I'm sure you agree with me.
100%. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more toxic than a cow that is sick and that's filled with bacteria, hormones, estrogen, growth hormone, and you're drinking the milk from that animal. And not only that, it's been spun through a machine, it's been heated up, it's been homogenized. It doesn't even resemble what someone would drink milk-wise 100 years ago, fresh from the farm, room temperature, with all the enzymes and the live bacteria. It's just nothing like that. And there's really no benefit. People always point to calcium. Well, I need to get my calcium. Well, like as you stated earlier, there are much better ways to get your calcium than from, a rancid cow's milk.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, the non-dairy options are so great right now. You will never miss it. You'll never know the difference. I love Nondairy ice cream as well. And I love that all of the mainstream brands are also all creating plant-based alternatives. I mean, Haagen-Dazs, Ben & Jerry's, they're all coming up with their own plant-based ice creams, and they're delicious. And plant-based everything. I mean, the plant-based yogurts are now amazing. Mm-hmm. The cheeses are getting there. The cheeses aren't quite there yet, but they're almost there. But I mean, butter, you mentioned macadamia nut milk. I love macadamia nut butter. It's absolutely delicious. And from what I remember, tastes exactly like butter to me. So there's really no excuse to be eating dairy these days at all.
Why do you think that they can't make a good vegan-based cheese yet? Because you are a chef, you know how to put these things together. My wife has bought a bunch of different plant-based cheese before, and they're held together with some really nasty substances in general, and they just don't even taste good. So we don't even buy them anymore.
Well, there are some really good ones on the market now, and they're getting better and better and better. I'm working with a company that I can't say because it's top.
Okay, I was going to ask you, what that is.
Well, it's not on the market yet, right. But it's pretty phenomenal. And a lot of the gourmet cheeses, I'll say, the last time I was in New York, I tried rind cheese. I don't know if you've had that yet. They're out of Brooklyn. They're doing these beautiful bries and blue cheeses and Jules Brie cheese out of Southern California. There are a lot of people doing some really good gourmet cheeses now. And so I think it's only a matter of time before they really nail the cheese. And then that's it. And then it's game over. Game over for dairy.
Game over is right. So let me know too when that cheese does debut, and I'll talk about it on my Friday review whenever that may be. How long do you think it'll be?
Who knows?
A while. Okay. All right. So that is good to hear, though, that a lot more people around the world, in Mexico too, where you work at the Four Seasons there, that people are just becoming much more open to the idea. And the truth is that it is tasty. I mean, like, that's the big thing is people wouldn't eat it if it wasn't good, if it didn't taste good. So that takes away a lot of the stigma as well. How do you come up with your recipes, though?
Oh gosh, all over the place. I mean, being Italian, I started cooking as soon as I could stand. And so I started naturally veganizing my family's recipes as a child and growing up. And so part of my travels and part of me running around the world and trying to absorb as much knowledge as humanly possible about food and cuisine and techniques is really to just get creative with it. I mean, there's so many cool ways of cooking things and just experimenting different flavors. And I mean, the world is absolutely endless. There's over 25,000 edible plants on Earth. I don't know if you knew that, and only about 11 widely sourced animal proteins. And so what you can do with plants is it's virtually endless. I mean, the time that I've spent in Peru has been some of my favorite, because in Peru, they grow so many varieties of everything. I think it's known to be the most fertile soil on Earth. I mean, they grow 3,500 varieties of potatoes on a regular basis.
Wow.
We grow 2. It's amazing what you can see out there in the world. And I really am a fan of diversifying what we're growing here in the States and really opening people up to and supporting the local farmers at the farmers market that are growing more unique vegetables and varieties of things that you haven't seen before. I highly suggest that you give things a try, because you'll never know. You'll discover things that you've never had before, that you prefer, that you like, that are more nutrient dense. A lot of our modified foods that everybody's growing that you just get at the grocery store have much lower nutrition content than some of the more natural. As you mentioned earlier, wild blueberries. Wild blueberries have far more antioxidants and nutritional benefits to regular blueberries. And so I think just getting out there and trying new things and experimenting with new ingredients in your own home can be more beneficial. And then for me, I mean, it's so inspiring just to see these things. And every time I see a new ingredient, I say, okay, great. What can I do with this? How can I play with this? How can I change the texture of this? How can I make this more exciting? And it works. And again, good food is good food is good food. And my family still eats meat, and they're my toughest critics. And so every time I come up with a new dish, I put it in front of them. And if they like it, I know it'll be a hit, because good food is good food is good food. And that's the bottom line of it. I don't often think of myself as cooking, just strictly vegan and just having like this weird cuisine. Because also people say, okay, you cook vegan food, but vegan food is found in every nation and every culture and every flavor around the world. So it's hard to define my cuisine and what I do, because it really is very broad and very all encompassing of so many different techniques and ingredients and cuisines.
Sure. And really, if you just took the meat or the fish off your plate, you'd have a vegan meal. So it's not like this is wildly outrageous that we're speaking about right now.
Unless you're in France.
Unless you're in, well, what's the difference in France?
They put dairy in everything.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. And I was going to say, you could probably substitute like some dairy in the dessert for just some nut milk, instead. And like, it wouldn't be wildly different. So, and I also look at it as just giving your digestive system a little bit of a break. It's always going to be the hardest thing to break down. Really is meat. It's a high thermogenic food and there's a lot to it, but it's also just a challenge to break down for the body. It doesn't mean that you can't eat it. It just means that, it's every once in a while, it might be nice to give your digestive system a little bit of a rest, a little vacation. And that can be part of it too. But, as you're saying this too, and you're looking at the different recipes and the different items that people can eat, I go back to, I'm always trying to find those new foods. And a lot of that is with farmers markets. So like when I go to Maine in the summer, they're really seasonal. That's the amazing thing about a farmer's market. Like you're getting it right from that farm. And so it's funny, but we started like this whole fiddleheads kick, and we never ate fiddleheads growing up. So like, okay, well, this is like one new thing that we can show our daughters and they can start to introduce. So really introducing this to your kids too, if you have children at a younger age, is going to set them up in life to be more curious for trying other foods out there. And I just say, to the typical person too, even though I'm always recommending those 7 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, most of us eat the same exact 7 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. So when you venture out to new foods, you also get the nutrients from those new foods as well. And that's why it's very beneficial for the body.
Yeah. And I always give parents the tip that something my mom did with me when I was a kid that I absolutely loved was that she'd let me go into the produce section of the grocery store and pick something, anything, something new that we would learn how to make together. And so I would always go and try and find the weirdest, most bizarre ingredient I could find. And then we go home and open her cookbooks and see if we could find, something to make with it. And it was so fun and it was so interesting. And I was so much more apt to trying new things because she encouraged it. And so to your point, maybe don't even you pick out those things at the farmer's market. Let your kids pick out the things that look like cool or weird or different. And, maybe get the purple potatoes this week at the farmer's market instead of the white potatoes, and just play around and experiment and see what tastes good.
I think that's great advice. Absolutely. Include your kids as part of the process. Let them add their own ingredients for a smoothie. Let them pick out some things at the farmer's market. I think that's the way to go for sure. Because they'll want to, right? They did it. They had a part in actually choosing. So they'll be more likely to at least try it. So I would love to hear now too about this new project you have going on, which is Around the World in 80 Plates, and how it's connected to food allergies and really bringing awareness around that as well.
Sure. I've partnered with FAIR, the Food Allergy Research and Education Foundation. They're fantastic people doing a lot. 1 in 4 people in the United States is affected by food allergies. And so I've created a show and a bunch of recipes for them that are all top 9 free. So free of the top 9 allergens. And if I can remember them all, it is fish, shellfish, eggs, dairy, soy, tree nuts, peanuts, sesame, and gluten and wheat. Oh my gosh, I remembered all of them. And
work.
so it's really been a challenge and exciting to not only create vegan dishes, but also to figure out how to make things vegan and non-dairy and creamy without using coconut milk, without using cashews, without using soy. It's been really fun. And so the show is airing on their YouTube channel, Living Teal, right now. You can find the links on my Instagram. And around the world, I need to play. So every episode we go to a different country, and I take one of the famous recipes of that country and I make it top 9 free. And it's a bit of a challenge, but so far, honestly, they've all turned out really, really delicious. And it's a fun show. We have a lot of fun doing it. There's a lot of comedy involved in it. And then we also bring in some celebrity guests. This week and next week, we have some exciting people coming on. So make sure you tune in to see those celebrities. And yeah, it's a good time. And it really, again, normalizes allergen-friendly cuisine, because it's so easy to make a few substitutions to make friendly for people struggling with allergies. And it's beautiful to see them treated unlike second-class citizens. You know, myself, traveling around the world as a vegan, you're often treated as a second-class citizen. And it's kind of the stigma that I've been trying to break around the world and all the places that I work. Of the most beautiful thing in the world to me is a table full of people with all sorts of dietary restrictions, all being able to have a delicious meal at the same table without anyone feeling bad about the way they have to eat.
I think it's a fantastic concept too. I really do, because being able to show people that it doesn't have to be difficult to just make a little substitution here. And it's not challenging, but the people just don't have the education. They just don't know, well, what would I substitute it with? And it really does take someone like yourself to be able to say, well, instead of an egg, you would use this, and you'd show them how to use that instead of an egg. And it sounds very entertaining too. I can't wait to check it out myself. So it's already debuted, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's already debuted. It's already on the Living Teal channel, and it is fun. I do use a lot of that science background to try and figure out how to replace these things. And like I said, still make them ultra tasty, but all very safe to eat for anybody.
That's great. And on your social media, you were also sharing recipes, and you're sharing all sorts of fun things from the plant-based community there too, right?
Yeah, every week I'm sharing new recipes, and you can follow my adventures. I've started traveling again, so it's always a good time on my social media. And I always respond to every single direct message I'm sent, which can take a couple days sometimes, but I always get back to everybody, because I love the communication through social media. I love meeting new people. I love that we can create a community, a positive community online talking about food.
No, that's amazing. Anything else you'd like to share with our community? Any parting words of wisdom?
Parting words of wisdom?
Yes. From the vegan chef herself.
Oh my gosh. Eat more plants, eat more fun food, cook your own food. I think that honestly is the best thing that has come out of this entire pandemic, is people cooking their own food in their own home. I feel like it's not only so much healthier for you, but there's so much beautiful tradition that's been lost through the generations of cooking at home and having those family recipes passed down. And so I hope that with this, people are going back to those family recipes or creating new family recipes that they can then pass on to their children, because it really is, food starts and ends in the home for me. And when you can bring your family around a table and eat together and not just take out, food is a communication of love. You know, here I am, my Italian roots coming out. It really is a communication of love for me. It's how I show people that I care, and to feed them, make them feel better after they eat it. I don't think there's a greater gift that you can give in the world.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with that. Some of my favorite memories from my childhood are going over my grandmother's house every single Sunday, sitting down to a 2 to 3 hour meal with all aunts and uncles and listening to different people's conversations. And it's a great time. And it's something you don't necessarily appreciate at that moment, but you will years later. And if you can, stay present now, because really those traditions, cooking together as a family, coming together, sharing conversation is really what it's all about. And so thank you so much for joining us here today. Truly appreciate you. And let us know how we can connect with you online.
Everything is very easy. It's all Leslie Durso. LeslieDurso.com. All the social medias are Leslie Durso. That's it.
Excellent. Well, I will link those up today on the show notes page. Once again, I appreciate you being on. Take care. Have an amazing day.
You as well. Thank you.